Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Syafiqah Akmal binti Muhammad Nur.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Femina Begum.
My name is Nur Syairah binti Muhammad Zamri.
My name is Ain Sabrina binti Muhammad Sofian.
My name is Siti Norahayu binti Sulaiman.
Report to police.
Ya.
Hello. Kau buat apa tu?
Pergi sekolah.
Sekolah? Wah, banyak kau benda di sekolah. Kain ni, siapa dah lipat ni? Nak kau lipat sekarang? Kau jangan gelak-gelak kau lipat baju. Hari ni sebelum pukul 7, siap. Tu yang kau gerak, bebek, buat kerja banyak tu. Hello?
Ya, Abang.
Kau buat apa tu?
Ada pinggan. Nah.
Maksud ni apa? Ni ada lagi ni. Kau ni basuh apa benda ni? Ni, tadi ni. Kau tadi. Kau dah makan banyak. Kau basuh pinggan. Kau nak basuh cuci tu. Semua aku tak siap aja. Tak cuci. Betul kau.
Ya, mungkin.
Aiskrim apa lagi? Kau nak makan nasi kan? Dah, tak payah.
Nak juga.
Kau tak payah. Kau ni. Kau tak payah.
What is a child abuse? Child abuse is when someone, or whether through actions or failing to act, causes injury, death, emotional harm, or risk of harm to a child. Child abuse or child maltreatment is physical, sexual, psychological, or neglect of a child or children, especially by a parent or caregiver. Child abuse may include any act or failure to act by a caregivers or parents that result in actually or potential harm to a child and can occur in a child home or in the organization, school, communities the child interact with. The term child abuse and child maltreatment are often used interchangeably, although some researchers make a distinction between them, treating child maltreatment as an umbrella term to cover neglect, exploitation, and trafficking. Different jurisdictions have developed their own stance toward mandatory reporting and different definitions of what constitutes child abuse to remove children from their family or process cutting a criminal charge. Child abuse have four types. Firstly is a neglect. Secondly is a sexual abuse. Third is a psychological abuse. And then lastly is a physical abuse.
What causes child abuse? There are many things that can cause child abuse. The reasons are often complex and there are no single simple explanation. Most parents want to live and love and care for their child in a safe home. Stress, tiredness, or lack of parenting skills or family support make the pressure of caring for a child overwhelming and can cause abuse. Causes of a child abuse can include first is isolation and lack of support, which is no family members, friends, partners, or community support to help with the demands of parenting. Next is stress, which is financial pressure, job worries, medical problems, or caring for family members with disability. Unrealistic expectation, which is a lack of understanding about a child's developmental stage and behavior. Next is intellectual disability, or we call it mental illness, which is parents may be unable to adequately care for their child. Next is a lack of parenting skills, which is parents may not know how to care for their child or may believe it is acceptable to use excessive physical force and discipline or punish a child. Drug, alcohol, or gambling problem, which is addiction or substance abuse, may affect of parenting ability to meet their child needs. Next is a low self-confidence, which is parents may doubt their ability to meet their child's needs and find it hard asking for help. Past childhood experience, which is parents may have experienced abuse as a child in their own families, which could have caused them to develop an insecure attachment style. And the last one is mental health problems.
Yearly, 3 in 4 children, or 300 million children, aged 2 till 4 years, regularly suffer physical punishment and psychological violence at the hand. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 13 men report having been sexually based abused as a child aged 0 till 17 years. 120 million girls and young women under 20 years of age have suffered some form of forced sexual contact of parents and caregivers. 1 in 10 children in Malaysia, about 750,000, are sexually abused according to community studies. In 95% of the cases, their sexually abusers are people known to them. Mostly the abusers are their fathers or stepfathers. Ongoing care of children and families can reduce the risk of maltreatment reoccurring and can minimize its consequence. The second one is sexual abuse. There was a total of 130 sexual abuse cases recorded in our study. Majority of the victims were female, equal to 85%, and Malays, aged between 5 to 12 years old. The 3 types of sexual abuse commonly seen as rape and sodomy. The child abuse statistic has in several categories, which is first the highest is physical abuse. There was a total of 216 physical abuse cases with 63 patients, equal to 29%, aged under 1 years old. 64 children were physically abused using external objects. The major causing physical injuries to infants were babysitters and caretakers with 81%. More than half of these infants had unknown mechanism of injury and of death. 4 infants died and 1 had long-term morbidity. For older children aged 1 to 12 years old, out of 135 physical abuse cases, 69 cases were caused by parents, 59 cases by biological parents, and 10 cases by step-parents. In 13 cases, suspect was unknown and not identified by victim. Younger children below 12 years old were sexually abused mainly by family members or relatives, while for the older children, majority of the perpetrators were acquaintances or friends. Most of the sexual offences also occurred in places familiar to the victims. The third is neglect. There were 41 cases of neglect reported, with increasing number of cases each year. 88 patients aged below 5 years old and 93% of them were neglected by their biological parents. Out of these, 18 cases resulted in serious injuries, with 6 cases of fractures and 4 cases each of inguinal bleed, burn injury and drowning. There were also 15 cases of abandoned babies by unmarried single mothers. There were 2 cases of neglect in terms of health, where parents refused basic medical treatment for their children, causing further deterioration of the patient condition. However, parents who refused routine vaccination for their children were not reported under negligence, as this issue is still under debate with no compulsory legislation as to date. Please love them for save our children.
Now, let's move. What are the effects of child abuse? All forms of abuse and neglect have a harmful effect on children and young people. There are some of the most common effects of the child abuse, which are: first, emotional scars. Children who suffer abuse or neglect feel most of the pain on the inside. Many children suffer low self-esteem and feelings of guilt, often blaming themselves for the abuse. Children can find it difficult to have a trusting relationships and experience loneliness and bullying. Second, physical scars. Children can have direct physical effects such as bruising, cuts, broken bones, health problems, undernourishment, or even death. And third, impact on future well-being. Research shows that children who suffer abuse are more likely to have lower educational attainment and suffer from drug and alcohol dependency. Long-term physical and mental health difficulty, including depression, can be a consequence. And lastly, impact on families. As well as the impact of abuse and neglect on the child themselves, their family can also be affected, with family members anxious and unsure about how to support a child who has been abused. A child's behavior and attitudes can be difficult to deal with, and families often struggle to know how to cope.
What are some types of child abuse? Legal definitions differ across jurisdictions, but there are general types of abuse to help identify whether a child has been abused. Physical abuse. This consists of a non-accidental physical injury from beating, kicking, shaking, throwing, or otherwise harming a child. Second is sexual abuse. This consists of any sexual act on a child by an adult or older child, with or without force or threat of force, such as verbal sedation or abuse, anal or vaginal intercourse, oral sex, or manual stimulation. Third is emotional abuse. This consists of behavior that impair a child's emotional development or sense of self-worth, such as constant criticism and threats. And the last one is psychological abuse. This consists of behavior that affect a child's sense of worth, such as harsh demands and yelling.
How to prevent child abuse. First, raise awareness. Most cases of child abuse happen because many people don't know some things they see can be classified as abuse. Educate the individuals on all types of violence and educate child abuse, how to protect from child abuse. You may also help other parents realize that they have been unconsciously hurting their children. Talk about child abuse at your place of work, with your friends, social platforms, neighbors, and every other chance you get. All conference or any other prevention programs on child abuse can go a long way in violence prevention. I'm moving on to my second point. Organize and encourage people to participate in campaigns. There are many institutions that have the potential of campaigning and be heard. They just require someone to lead them and encourage them to join in. Talk to religious leaders, political leaders, activists, celebrities, schools, etc. Meet and organize child abuse prevention movements in your city or community. It starts small and finally spreads nationally. My last point is report suspected abuse or neglect. If you have reason to believe a child has been or may be harmed, call your local Department of Children and Family Service or your local police department. Thank you.